You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, welcome back to our last normal show of Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis, before I head overseas back to the UK to hike for a couple of months. I'm Steve Adams on Mighty Blue, and to be honest, putting together this show has been logistically challenging, as I've had to write a whole new section and recorded everything at the last moment. Those of you who know me probably aren't all that surprised. Yeah, I did it, and I know you're going to enjoy the show today. First up, we'll have another of those extraordinary women who just make you shake your head with their achievements. Briana DeSanctis hiked the AT in 2015, yet she always felt that it wasn't enough. She was looking for a bigger challenge, and boy, did she find it. In January 2022, Briana set out to hike 6,800 miles on the American Discovery Trail. It took her about 2 years to complete it, and as you'll hear, it still wasn't enough. We'll meet Briana in a moment. For our second section today, something a bit more personal, I wanted to read to you a longish note that I made about the hike on the Virginia Triple Crown that I completed with 6 friends recently. I didn't know what to expect, but I can just tell you now that I've become the biggest fan of group hikes. We'll hear that after Briana. Sadly, we recorded Briana outside where the wind was a bit of a factor, but I don't think you'll mind as she has so much good stuff to say. She was also troubled during the recording by a blue-eyed spider on or around her computer. If you could tell the colour of a spider's eyes, believe me, you're talking about a big one. Here's Briana. Our guest today is Briana DeSanctis. Hey, Briana, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And bizarrely, for the past 2 years, you've been hiking. So tell everybody what you've been doing.
On January 1st, 2022, I began hiking the 6,800-mile-long American Discovery Trail, which is a coast-to-coast trail that spans from Delaware to California.
Now, I know it's not 6,800 miles to get from Delaware to California, so you obviously decided to take the scenic route, didn't you?
It's actually way more than that, because you have to consider in how many times I got lost and how many times I had to walk back and forth.
Oh, that's interesting. It's funny. I didn't think about that. Yeah. So, is it a signposted trail? I mean, or is it mapped? I mean, how did you find your way?
I would definitely not recommend anyone to assume that they are going to find their way through the American Discovery Trail looking at trail markers. It is imperative to get the maps, because the trail, out of almost 7,000 miles, I feel as though there are probably about 1,000 individual trail markers dotting the way, which is a very stark ratio, if you know what I'm talking about. On the Appalachian Trail, you can look from one tree, and when you see one white blaze, you can see 1, 2, maybe even 3 more. The American Discovery Trail, I went months without seeing a trail marker. Months. And many times I went months. You'll go through almost a whole state and you're like, oh, wow. Every time you see one of these suckers, you want to take a picture because it's such a rare occurrence.
Has it been mapped? And I mean, is it a prescribed trail? You know exactly where you're going, or I mean, you don't know exactly where you're going, but is it a particularly mapped out trail?
Yes, right. It's 100% mapped out. The American Discovery Trail has a website. It's a real thing. It's not just something I made up. They have a website. They have the American Discovery Trail Society. They have board members. They have state to state. Every state has a volunteer coordinator that their participation levels vary all across the board, just depending on what they have going on in their life. And some of them are extremely proactive to help hikers and reach out to hikers that they know are on the trail. And nice. Some of them I never heard from. So it was just kind of like that, but it is a real trail. They even have merch. You can even buy merch, but there are maps. The maps are exclusive to the American Discovery Trail and their website, and they have plotted this fantastic way to get across America in a very squiggly line and 2 different paths.
Well, that's the thing. You as what I mentioned, it shouldn't be 6,800 miles between Delaware and the West Coast because there's a northern and a southern leg. But you decided to do both, didn't you? And you're the first woman to solo hike the full 6,800 miles. Was that important to you as the first woman?
Of course it was. It was very important to me. When I first found the American Discovery Trail online, I was just kind of in my post-trail depression funk that lasted for years and years and years after I finished my first thru hike, the Appalachian Trail, in 2015. And I'd been looking online and I found this really long trail that I could not actually fathom how you would go about doing this trail as a thru hike.
Sure.
So I reached out to the society and I asked them how many people had done it. And then the wheels started turning and I said, this trail is going to suck because there's going to be a ton of road walking. You're going to have to walk through states that are to some people maybe unfavorable to walk through, maybe less scenic. This is not a 2,200 mile long mountain range. This is the cuts of America. You are walking through all kinds of different stuff. And so it was really important to me that if I was going to save, spend this much time and to save all this money to plan this entire trip, or at least, the tangible parts that you can plan, buy all of my gear for inevitably all 4 seasons, maybe more than once. I didn't know it was going to take me 2 years, but I don't say it took me 2 years. I say I took 2 years.
Yeah. And you know what? That's actually an important way to look at it, isn't it? It's you finish when you finish, don't you? There's
exactly.
No point saying you got to finish in a certain amount of time. And I feel the same with the AT as well. And actually, it's on the AT I want to start because you thru-hiked that in 2015. I think it was 2015. Yes. So let's start there. Had you been a backpacker at the time, or was this your first shot at a kind of long distance trail?
As far as long distance trail is concerned, yeah, this was my first long distance thru hike, and I grew up in Maine, so I was not a stranger to the Appalachian Trail or, a lot of other hikes and outdoor activities for that matter. I grew up outside. I was outdoors all the time when I was younger. And even, after I started driving, I was going and finding places. I always had my tent, my whole car camping setup was always in the trunk of my car.
But as you really know, car camping is nothing like backpacking, is it?
No, it's not. And I didn't really I knew about backpacking, but it was kind of way in the back of my brain because I really liked going on hikes and stuff, but I had this car. So I was like, well, I should drive my car. And I started exhausting all these hikes and car camping areas in Maine. And so I eventually started to buy gear started to buy what I thought was backpacking gear. And I was doing section hikes on the Appalachian Trail on my days off from work. So essentially I would hitchhike from either my job and I would be all ready to go, packed up, or I would get a ride to my starting point. And then I would hike for the next 2 consecutive days on my days off. Usually did about 15 to 20 miles a day, good little section, whatever I could plan out using the Bible of Maine hiking trails.
Right.
Book that I have. Yeah, this is the best book ever. And I would find where the road came out, where the trail would intersect with the road. And that would be my takeout point. So I would do that and hitchhike back or however I would get back. So I started meeting thru hikers, and these guys were almost done. For the most part, I was running into only Nobos and they were getting to be almost to the end of their hike. So I'm sitting around with these guys at night or in the evening, and everyone's starting to make their dinner and they're boiling their water. And of course, I'm very new at backpacking at this point. I'm whipping out my Walmart Sterno stove, and by the time these guys were snoring in their tents, my water had just about started to boil. So So I learned really quickly that the gear that I had wasn't only just nerdy, but it was just completely obsolete for backpacking. So I started to take notice of what these people were carrying and started to do my own research. And then by late August, I had completed the section that goes to Height of Land in Aquasic, Maine. And I just looked across the road. I saw that white blaze and I said, this is dumb. I should just do the whole thing. So I went back to work and I told my boss that she had about 6 months to find a new manager. So that was my official giving my notice. And she said, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I'm going to go hike the Appalachian Trail." And she kind of looked at me and was like, "Okay, all right." Like, she didn't really believe me until my Big Agnes tent was sent to the restaurant and all my gear started getting sent there. And she's like, "You have a package. I don't know what it is, but it's really light." And I said, "Oh, that's my tent, the one I'm going to use when I leave here in now, 4 months to go hike the Appalachian Trail." So that's how that came about.
So it obviously inspired you to do more because you've gone way beyond the AT now. What did the AT give you that perhaps you hadn't expected? Because I think most people, when they set out and think about the Appalachian Trail, that's a heck of a lot to bite off in your life anyway for anybody. And you've obviously, as I say, done more. But what was it giving you that made you think, "Oh, geez, I want to do much more of this, and I want to really extend myself further"?
I don't know if it's what it gave me or if it's a combination of what it gave me and what it left me wanting.
Okay.
When I got to the top of Mount Katahdin, I was devastated. Yeah. I just was like, man, like the next cheeseburger I eat is going to go right to my thighs. But no, but honestly, I was dreading finishing the AT from the day I started. I just always knew that this was, as soon as I got on trail, I remember one day I was writing my blog and I just said something like, "I was meant to do this. I was made to do this. I love this." So, and when I finished in Mount Katahdin, I just felt like I was like, this can't be it. That's not it. I didn't get what I was looking for from this. And I honestly, if you ask me right now, I couldn't tell you what that is. And I still can't because I still haven't found it. But I've been always looking for something within these hikes, something that's going to push me to the next level, something that is going to be more and more and more. And I think, honestly, that's a really healthy way to feel as humans because we should always be pushing ourselves to do more. And that hike was my gateway drug to the American Discovery Trail.
Well, there are gateway drugs and there are gateway drugs. That's a really nice gateway drug to have, I should think. But you did say the way you quit, you got the post-trail depression. And a lot of people who haven't done this don't understand. They think it's only walking, it's not, you shouldn't get post-trail depression. But I know it's true, and I'm sure you know it's true. But you say it was with you for quite a while.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how people do this, how I feel like I see so many people on social media that I either know or don't know, but just in the hiker circuit, if you will. And these people are hiking one trail and then they get right on another one. I'm like, where is your money coming from? Because I most certainly needed to have 7 years to recuperate before I was financially ready to hike this trail. Plus I had help from individual sponsors and people that would, a few of my brands would send me gear, like Town Shirt sent me all these shirts that I wear.
Nice.
And so it was just kind of, it was a long time coming. I wanted to hike. I would have turned around at Katahdin and walked all the way back down to Springer if I had enough money to do it.
So it's just simply a matter of funds, because I know one of the things that struck me, and I was, when I did the AT, it was so much more expensive than I'd imagined. And I've used the expression before, you hemorrhage money when you go into town, so you have to be careful with that. And I was going to ask you about it because you're a journalist and you do public speaking as well. And you quit and so on. Roughly how much were you able to get by on out there for about 2 years? Because living life generally costs you money. Just existing costs you money. Were you as cheap as you possibly could be, or how did it work out financially? By cheap, but maybe cheap means different thing over here. But you know what I mean. Were you as frugal as you possibly could be?
I'm pretty sure I could tell anybody in the world a rough amount of how much I spent on this trail, and there's not one single person that would think that that was cheap.
Oh.
I did not do it very in an extremely inexpensive manner, and that's exactly the same spirit that I took with me on this trail as I did on the Appalachian Trail. I had 6 or 7 months to save money before I hiked, from the day I decided to hike the Appalachian Trail to the day I flew down to Georgia.
Right.
I was working in a restaurant. I had been working there for quite a few years. I had a lot of regulars. I made it public that I was going to hike, and my tips were like going just through the roof. And people just started, it was balls to the walls. People just started supporting me like crazy. So for this trail, I also made it public, but also this was pretty much during a weird time because it had been COVID. So I wasn't working. I had been working in a high-end restaurant bar as a bartender, and then we were all laid off because of COVID. Yeah. So I was laid off for quite a while. So, and then when I finally went back to work, I did a complete change of career change or what I was doing at the time. And so it was really crazy. So I didn't really have that same exposure as I did when I was getting ready to hike the Appalachian Trail. But it took me a long time to save the money. And and thank you if anybody's listening that is someone that has donated money to me, or supported me or given me a place to stay on the American Discovery Trail. Thank you so much, because I had so many people donate money to me. It seemed like anytime I was getting low on funds, I always either found a place I could work. And I was working the entire trail, writing my column.
Oh, right. I didn't realize that. Oh, that's cool.
I kept my newspaper column on the Daily Bulldog website. It's a Franklin County, Maine newspaper. It's an online newspaper, and they had asked me to write a column for them before I started my trip. So I started writing my column, which is called America on 2 Feet. And I wrote that the entire way through my hike.
Nice.
So I was working my entire hike, and I also did a lot of public speaking all across America. I probably spoke about 20 times, which to me is really impressive for actually being through hiking at the same time and trying to make the logistics work out.
Wow.
And doing it all.
How'd you arrange that? Did you do it through meetups? Or did you just reach out?
No. So what I did, I would look on Facebook groups, local, like I got to Kansas City, I got to Omaha, I got to Denver, I got to wherever, all these cities I went through, even small towns. And I would reach out if there was any kind of a largely populated Facebook group that would have been in the interest of outdoors or women forward or something like that. And I would just reach out and say, or even like a current events of that city. As long as I had a ton of members, I would just be like, hey guys, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. I'm a public speaker, and I'm actually looking for anybody that knows of any leads on a venue that I can use to give a presentation about my hike. And I got great responses for it. I was actually emailed by the vice president of Garmin International, and he emailed me and said, I saw a post of yours on Facebook, and I think what you're doing is absolutely fantastic, and I would like to personally invite you to come speak at the Garmin headquarters.
Wow, how cool is that?
That is very cool. And it was even, just to make it even sweeter, I had recently lost not recently, I had been in Ohio, but I had lost my watch. And I didn't have a watch, and they compensated me very well for that. And they gave me a lot of gear. It was amazing. And not so much gear. They gave me clothing. They gave me this Garmin. It was a Solar Instinct watch. And it was perfect for me because it would charge on its own when I was hiking. And I ended up getting the InReach also. Did I say InReach already? Garmin Instinct Solar is the watch, and then the InReach is that little thing where you can text people and push the button when you get stuck on the side of a canyon. We'll get to that later.
So to me, for me, the AT was both physical and mental in nature, but I'd imagine the ADT, particularly the length of it, would have been probably more than a little intimidating. How did you approach the mental side of being out there? Because it's a heck of a long time to be away, isn't it?
That's my biggest takeaway from the ADT is the mental fortitude and just knowing how strong my mind is like, if you will, mind blowing, because that trail was so monotonous for days, weeks, months.
You're not selling it, by the way. You're not selling it to me. Monotonous.
I don't want a lot of people to get on that trail. You know? It's like when Colorado first legalized marijuana and everyone started moving there. So people just started talking down about Colorado and saying the views were terrible and the mountains were awful and nothing was good. So people wouldn't move there.
That's funny.
But this is all about type 2 fun, though. This is what we look for some reason. Well, I'm sure not everybody. I'm an animal and I don't expect anyone to be anything like me. So that's okay. But for me personally, I feel like, this is my kind of fun. Like it's fun in a way. Maybe it's not even fun. It's that type 2 fun that we all crave. It's this thing. It's like, I'll tell people I don't even like hiking. I hate hiking. I don't even know why I do it. I'm just addicted to it. And that's what I like to do. I like to go hiking because there's something about being out there and struggling and having that, testing your strength. It's just so important to me. And I feel like I did that on a daily basis.
I feel that. I've just done 4 days out on the AT, and I've often thought, and I've said on the show rather, that I don't particularly like hiking either, but I love the idea of going from the beginning of one place to the end of one place and getting there. It hurts, it sucks, and type 2 fun is definitely a way of doing it. But can you describe the scope of being on a trail for about 2 years? I mean, many of us can at least imagine 6 months on the trail, but 2 years is absolutely a whole new ball game because you've gone through all the seasons, haven't you?
All of the seasons.
Couple of times.
And sometimes you find ones that don't even exist, like you never knew existed. Like, oh, there's a tornado season. Oh, there's a hail season. Oh, this is definitely lightning season. And this is the windiest season I've ever been through, it's a lot, if you're hiking a normal, and I say normal meaning like let's say any of the Triple Crown trails or a national scenic trail, that becomes I feel like on the Appalachian Trail, it was kind of like, to a lot of other hikers, including myself, it seemed like not only a pilgrimage, but it was like your job,
Oh, yeah,
it was like your job is you're hiking every day. That's your job. You just don't really get paid for it. You get paid in other ways.
Yeah.
But for this trail, it's not just your job anymore. This is your life. This is your whole entire life. And the longer you're out there, the harder it is to come back into society afterwards. But it's a lot of planning. It was a lot of mental preparation. And I already knowing what I knew on the Appalachian Trail and the mental struggles that sometimes we face there, I knew that they would be exponentially more on this trail, just because, I mean, and I know I always get in trouble for throwing shade on the Midwest, but honestly,
there you go, knock yourself out.
Yeah. Honestly, the hardest mental struggle on this trail that I had, and there was never, ever, don't get me wrong, there was never at one single moment on the entire American Discovery Trail that I wanted to throw in the towel and go quote unquote home. But I definitely had a really big struggle when I had finally gotten to Colorado after hiking 2,700 miles just to see a mountain view. And then after I got through Denver area and I hiked through as much of the Rockies as I could, and this was like, getting to be Thanksgiving time and December.
Sure.
So I knew, because I had hiked all the way from Delaware to Colorado on the southern route. I took the southern route from Ohio to Denver, and then I knew that I was going to have to fly back to Ohio and hike the northern route because, one, I didn't want to continue on and get all the way into the middle of nowhere in Utah and then be out there and it's like snowing and stuff, and like, not that I wasn't used to that anyway, but I just didn't want to have to bail out and go back and do that and then not have an airport to fly out of or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
Denver's a good place to just deal with it and just man up and just get back over there and hike through the Midwest again on the northern route when it's going to be super cold. And it was, and it kicked my mental ass, but it was something that I had already expected. So I think it's really important that you go into things with a little bit of research and a little expectation that it's going to suck, because it just makes it so much easier to deal with just because you already knew it. And for me, I make things way worse than they are. So it was like, oh, well, it's okay. Like, I'm not just like sitting here crying, walking down this, this farm road all day long every day. I'm just sitting here kind of complaining about it instead,
Now, this isn't meant to be a sexist question, but did you always, I'm sure you understand what I mean by this. Did you always feel safe out there?
100%.
Did you?
Yes, I
Even
did.
with all the road walking as well?
Yep. I always felt safe. I feel like before I would ever be scared, I would be annoyed more than anything else. And trust me, I met a couple of super shady people. Not shady, but they were just assholes. I don't know if I can say that.
Of course you can.
I just did.
Yeah.
So, and I plan on illustrating them thoroughly in my memoir that I'm writing.
Excellent.
It's like, hey, you guys knew I was a writer. Don't be a dick if you know I'm going to be writing a book, because your name will be in
nice.
it. So.
That's a good way to say to people, if you just be careful what you're going to do now.
Yeah, I only had a few people that were, just to come to mind, there were really only 1-2 people that were rude to me. And there were just the rest of the other people that I didn't have like the most positive experience from were just people that I was basically just tired of hearing the same thing from people that didn't know about hiking, and, just say, oh, well, I hope you're bringing a gun with you.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that you learn so quickly being out on trail that on this trail specifically, you learn extremely quickly when you do it how I did, and how I went to the American Legions, and I went to all these places when I would get to one just to meet the people and kind of have more of a one-on-one experience than just to go to a sports bar where everyone's on their phones.
Sure.
And plus the beer and food is really cheap, and the people are great, and I would always find a place to stay with an American Legion. So it was really great. But, I would go in there, and you also have to deal sometimes with a lot of mansplaining and people that are going to tell you or ask you, oh, so where'd you come from to get here? And then you show them the map, and then they say, well, where are you going next? And I'm like, well, this is where are you headed next? And I would just tell them like the next kind of town that I felt like they would probably know about that was next. And then they say, oh, how are you getting there? And show them. And then they, oh, no, you're not going that way. No, what you're going to do is you're going to go. And I was like, oh boy. Okay. You're just going to, now I was like, all right, Briana, just shut up and let them talk. And you say, okay, and thank you. And you walk away. We don't need to like counter this and make it last forever.
Women have to put up with this all the damn time, I'm sure. It must be a bloody nightmare for them. But you would still recommend it for other women to do this, wouldn't you? I know, the fact that you were the first woman to do it is important to you, and you already mentioned that. But you think, you're a big proponent of women hiking as well. Is this something you felt safe enough? Would most people be safe enough out there, do you think?
I think anybody would be safe enough. People's comfort levels vary.
Yeah.
I'm really big on saying not to step outside of your comfort zone, but to expand your comfort zone and to create things in your life that might be a little uncomfortable for you, but get comfortable with them, because like it'll be a routine after a while. You'll start to understand things, and just to be observant and know what you're getting yourself into. But the number one advice I have to any woman out there that wants to be doing something like this or go out into the outdoors and go hiking by herself, the best number one piece of advice that I can give that will keep you safe 100% of the time is don't listen to anyone telling you can't do something, because it's complete bullshit. And
is that the technical term?
Yes, that's and most of these people have never been to these places that they're warning you.
Yeah, sure.
And I was my constant headache throughout the entire thing. God, it was mentally extremely draining to have people constantly telling you, oh, don't walk through East St. Louis, don't walk through here, don't walk through there, because like, is that because you've been there and something bad happened to you, but it's not necessarily going to happen to everyone? Or is that because you heard something on the news?
Sure.
Or is that because there are Black people that live there? Or is that because, why is it that you're afraid of this place? Because I don't have to be. Yeah. And a lot of people
they're trying to transfer their fears to you, aren't they? They're trying to transfer their fears to you.
Yeah, and it's
I'm sure
annoying.
they are.
But you know what happens is, after you do something like this, Steve, you get power, because I've done this. So I have that experience that other people don't have. And I started to realize this power that I have of persuasion, of education, of positivity, of motivation and empowerment and inspiration that I have, that I can pass on to these people, because anybody can tell you anything, but from somebody that's done it already, you probably should listen to me.
Quite right too, yeah. And I was exhausted at the end of both my through hikes, but 6,800 miles, once again, is a massive step up. How beaten up were you by the end physically? And have you recovered well? Or did you basically get fitter out there?
No, I mean, I honestly don't understand why people think that you need to have, or well, for me anyway, it was just not like that at all for me. I just continued to get stronger the whole time, and I never felt like I needed to rest. When I needed to rest, I would take a 0, and I never felt like I wanted to stop hiking. I wasn't tired. My feet didn't hurt. People say, oh, how's your back? Are you going to go see a doctor? I'm like, why? Because I've inflicted all these injuries upon myself, doing what every human should be doing for their entire life, which is moving. No.
Motion is the potion, as they say.
Exactly. So I only got stronger.
So talk to us about community on the trail. And it's an important part for many people on the AT, and it was certainly important for me. Was there any sort of trail community out there on the ADT, or did you come close to towns and people knew what the ADT was, or were you pretty much by yourself out there effectively?
Yes, I was by myself the entire time. No other hikers on the trail. If they were very far, far away from me, and most of them were either doing a section, or I only met one other hiker that went from England, from west to east, and he had done the southern route, and he was doing that, and he is the only one I ever met. So the only sense of trail community I had at all, Steve, was actually before I began my hike, because I reached out to the people that I could find online that were actively hiking the American Discovery.
Right.
So I reached out to 3 guys that I would talk to every once in a while, and only one of them finished. And so it's just
says the woman quietly. Only one of them finished. I picked up on that. You got to be.
I did not.
The listeners can't see, but I saw the look in your eye. Actually, I want to ask you about. I've written down a name. I've written down something, and I don't know this person, so maybe it's just a note that I've made to myself. But it says, mention Sharon Weekly. Tell me about Sharon Weekly.
Sharon Weekly is the West Virginia coordinator of the American Discovery Trail. Right. And she's actually, you may have written this down because it was actually her birthday not too long ago.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Sharon. She is the West Virginia coordinator of the American Discovery Trail. And on top of creating this fantastic documentation of places to stop in West Virginia for the ADT hikers. It's the most thing like a guidebook that you have, but it's just for that one state. Right. She tells you, oh, when you get to this town, you can stay here, here, or here. These are places you can eat. And she's really a great asset to have for the trail. And she met with me somewhere in West Virginia while I was hiking along, and she took me out to breakfast, and it was really great meeting her. But she also is the one that records all of the hikers on the Discovery Trail. So if you are planning to hike the trail, in its entirety, or go through a long portion, or if you want the American Discovery Trail to know that you're hiking, basically,
right.
she's the one you want to contact, or contact their Facebook page. But she's really great. She's a really great coordinator. The Delaware coordinator, Terry Schuchart, she met me in Delaware the day that I began, and one of the coordinators of California met me when I finished, John Faisal. He's actually the guy that created the route of the American Discovery Trail through California.
Oh, nice.
I stayed with him and his wife at their house also all night. Yeah, it was fun. We watched the Super Bowl together, I think, or we watched football together anyway.
So your American Discovery Trail, Katahdin, is walking into the water, is it, on the Pacific coast?
Yes. So coast to coast.
That is a pretty cool way to do it.
It's your Springer and your Katahdin.
Oh, that is so cool. That is so cool. And
well, that's why I hiked it the way that I did, is because I didn't want to. A lot of people said, well, you should just push all the way through, get to the ocean, and then fly back to Ohio, do the northern route, and end up in Denver. And I was like, why? So I can be on a paved bike path in front of a sign that says you are here. I'm like, no. When I finished, I had a giant, I could see for 2 miles. When I first stepped out onto the beach, you have about 2 miles walk down the beach until you get to the invisible line, because there's absolutely no, in American Discovery Trail fashion, there's absolutely no American Discovery Trail markers in that entire park on the West Coast. So so that's great. But I got down there, so there's nothing, like, unless you're following your map to the T, there's nothing that will tell you exactly where the finish is. There's no indication, but I could see when I got out onto the beach, I could see this big white banner that was 2 miles away, and I could see a bunch of people standing around it. So I knew that was, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's for me. And then it was kind of the oh shits started coming along. I'm like, oh man. So I stopped right there and I walked in by myself in the water right in front of me. Because even though it wasn't the official end of the trail, I just felt like I owed it to myself to take a moment to say, like, it's okay. I've done it. I've done it for myself. I've done something on this trip for myself. Yeah,
you know what? I agree with you. You need that moment. You need something where you don't have anybody around you. You can just feel it and take it in yourself. And that's probably one of your highlights. But, we all have highlights on trail, but we also all have lowlights. Can you give me one of each? A low light and a highlight.
My low light of the trail was actually probably finishing. It was not something it was something I've been dreading for miles. I dreaded seeing the Pacific Ocean from the moment I stepped into the Atlantic Ocean. I was like, this is going to go by way too fast. You better enjoy every step. And it did. It went by way too fast.
But Briana, that's what you said about the AT. You were dreading the ending as soon as you finished. So and you felt that all the time. So this never was this never enough?
It's never. It's like that James Bond movie, The World Is Not Enough. I feel like that's where I am in the hiking world right now. It's not the length of the trail. It's not the type of trail. It's not whether or not you have hikers on it. It's that feeling of freedom that you have when you're through hiking or when you're on a really long distance backpack trip. It's just that you're disconnecting from society. Sure. And you are re-emerging back into the real world that you should be in, and you're in complete freedom. And that to me is the most important part of my entire life. So I look at my life as I will put my head down and work for 7 years so I can get back out and enjoy my life again. So work is just a break from the trail, really. It's like, that kind of thing.
Well, I can think of only one other challenge that might top that. And maybe it's just a made up route, I don't know, but there's one connected footpath between the south of South Africa up to, I think it's Vladivostok in Siberia or something like that anyway, 15,000 miles. If you haven't had enough by then, you're in all sorts of trouble because you're done.
Sorry, there's a big spider right around me now. I'm facing off with the giant spider right now. I'm sorry.
You're scared of a spider? Oh dear. Okay.
Well, I just don't like them when they're places where people are.
Okay. We'll move on from that.
I saw tons of spiders on the trail. But anyway, yeah, so I mean, I would totally I think he's a jumping one, and he's looking at me like he wants to jump it. I'm just not okay with that right now. Don't do it. So I could show you this. If this was being filmed right now, this would be great because I could show you this guy. He's white and black and got blue eyes, and he's
You
going
got blue eyes?
Blue eyes. He must be related to me. He's going for my beer. Okay, now it's getting serious.
So you finished the trail this year. Was it February this year?
February 10th.
February 10th this year. Have you, because you had the post-trial depression as soon as you finished the AT, how are you feeling now? Do you feel okay?
I don't think I had post-trial depression as soon as I finished the AT. I feel like it came on, it was a slow burn. It started to come on, and I feel especially as winter came on, and I was living in Colorado after the AT, and I just really just wanted to be out there through hiking again, not just going on a hike, but through hiking. And when I finished, oh God, he's coming. When I finished get out of here.
I'm keeping all these in, I'll tell you.
He's coming right toward me, and he's in front of my laptop. He's between my laptop and me, and it's just, this is not okay.
Flick him.
No, I'm afraid. I can't flick him. He's too cute. He's very furry. He's about
yeah, that doesn't come across in the podcast, by the way, just so you know.
He's about 6 centimeters. Oh, he's coming to the edge. Okay. All right.
Move.
He's one of those jumpy ones, and he's at the edge like he's ready to jump. Go. Oh, God, he's going to... No, I might just have to move because he raised up his two front... whatever they're called, tentacles, I guess. He's doing some weird things. Yeah.
So this super brave adventurer is now off the camera, moved away from a spider. Excellent.
Thing has this connection to me that I can't even. Okay, he's on his way.
Right. Okay.
He's on his way. Okay, we're back.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We're back. Keep going that way, and you'll be fine.
So
we can coexist. We just need to respect each other's spaces, and he was not respecting.
Quite right, too. Clearly. So, what are you going to do? If this isn't not so much. I mean, I'm sure you loved it, and it was great, and it was terrific, Type 2 fun, all that sort of thing. But what's going to be enough for you, or is it a case of just wanting to find another great trail to hike? It doesn't have to be more than 6,800 miles, I presume, because anything over 100 miles, 200 miles is testing for anybody, I think. So, what are you looking at next?
I have a couple of trails. I have one trail in particular that I've been eyeing, and I'm not really publicly sharing that yet.
Okay.
For a lot of reasons, but I don't know if I will ever be satisfied with the hiking that I've done. I think that it's going to come down to one day I will be maybe just unable to walk anymore, and I'm just going to have to throw in the towel then. But I feel like not only is it just about being outdoors and hiking, but it's a lot about personal growth. And I feel like it's very important for us to strive to acquire the most personal, spiritual, mental growth that we can.
Sure.
And I think that the opportunity to gain that never ends. And I feel like that's probably a big reason why I just want to keep hiking, because I find that when I'm out there in nature and I'm hiking, and that's when I'm my strongest, that's when I'm the most comfortable, and I feel like I'm on top of my game. So I want to take all those experiences from the trails that I've hiked and bring them back into society, and hopefully show other people what I've learned and maybe encourage them to find their own way of finding that for themselves too.
And that feeds into the last real thing. Being away from home for so long, and actually you use the expression "you're chronically homeless," which is hilarious, by the way. Being away from home for so long, did your journey impact your relationships with others? Both during the hike and since you returned to life after trail. Do you feel different? What by that I mean is, do you feel disconnected from people?
Absolutely. I feel very disconnected, and I haven't even had a chance to reconnect with anyone yet. But I can tell you, as far as things go on trail for me, the number one thing I notice when I'm reunited with people that I know is you expect everyone else to change. You expect that when you're gone for so long that things have changed. But really the only being that's changed is you.
Yeah.
And so you notice more about other people what you had blurred in before because maybe you also were more like that yourself. But I notice I have a lot more patience, and I tend to be a lot less accepting of other people's impatience. And I notice when people are rude a lot, and I notice when people are judgmental a lot more, because when you're out there hiking, it's a very non-judgmental time.
Sure.
And you smell awful, and you're in pain, and you're hungry and thirsty, and you look like shit. And it's just a humbling experience. And so you try to not take that for granted. And just to come back into society where I feel like there's a lot of negativity and stuff, it's just ironic to me, because people think, oh, you're going to go out and hike, you're not going to be safe, somebody's going to come out there and kill you immediately. I'm like, look what y'all are doing. You guys are living in Sin City, USA, everywhere, and you're still making it. So why would I not survive in nature?
There's a good point to think about at the end. Then look, I presume you're going to write a book about this at some stage.
I'm working on my memoir, not as we speak, but I am. It's actually in a minimized box here on my laptop. I'm doing a lot of other stuff. I'm doing a lot of freelance writing, and I have some public speaking gigs booked. So public speaking and writing are my career for the time being.
Well, what I'll do, I'll put a few links in the show notes about getting in contact with you for public speaking and things like that. And, anything, I think I've already got some links from you. But, I appreciate you coming on. It took a while for us to put this together, but I think what you've done is freaking amazing. And I don't know how you did it. I don't know many people who could spend so damn long away from home. But as you say, you're chronically homeless anyway, which is
exactly
great sign. But look, I wish you well in the future. I hope the book goes well when you actually get it done. And let us know, and I'll tell people on the show that it's out. Okay.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. I've had a blast.
Okay, good to talk to you then. Okay.
Thank you. You too.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye. She was a trip, wasn't she? Unlike some before her, Briana recognised that once she was back from the hike, the only thing that had changed was her. I think I identify with that comment. You're out there for months, or in her case, years, and you know that you've changed. So it's quite jarring to find that others haven't. There's no reason why they should, of course, but it's so noticeable. I hope that Briana one day does take on something that will be enough, though she seems perfectly happy to continue to strive for more all the time. Would that we were also ambitious. As many of you know, I was back on the Appalachian Trail last week, and I wanted to share some of that experience with you. I originally intended to interview my fellow hikers, but really, in the end, I decided to just give you my thoughts, though I will be adding one little story from Betty McInerney, who was one of our Mighty Blue class of 2023 and who was returning to the trail to fill in some miles on her second section. But we'll hear from Betty in a moment. This was set up by me for a couple of reasons, really. I wanted to reconnect with some of my Team 6 group from our TSX Challenge in 2022 because we bonded so well as a group that I wanted that feeling once more. The whole group thing was somewhat alien to me before that trip, but I quickly fell in love with everything about both the trip and the people I went with. There was such a feeling of camaraderie that it's difficult to put into words, yet the whole experience enhanced my hike way beyond what I'd ever expected. So I was kind of trying to replicate that. The other reason that I wanted to go was a kind of shakedown hike for my upcoming Southwest Coast Path hike. I must say the trip fulfilled both of those hopes. Eventually, the party grew to 7 people, and our start point was Daleville, Virginia, a place I remember well from both my thru hikes. Difference is that we were heading sobo. 5 of us met up the previous evening and had dinner together at an excellent diner called, I think it's Angel's Diner. Great food, loved it. Our party comprised me, Eric Gross, who'd come to TSX and who I met when he came to visit me on my 2019 hike. Then it was Beth Becky-Stengham, who was also Team 6. Another Team 6 member was Michelle Brown, who I'd originally met at one of our Woods Hole weekends, and Michelle brought along her fella, Brian, or Sketch. Let's just say, being called Sketch had nothing to do with his ability to draw. Great guy. So that was the 5 that evening. The following morning we met up with Betty and another listener to the show, Hugh Ickreth. So our team of 7 was complete. The forecast all week was that we would likely get rain on those first 2 days, with it drying out for the Friday and Saturday. It didn't work out that way. We met on the Wednesday morning and, as all good hikers do, we decided to defer our start by heading back to Angel's Diner for breakfast. It was a great choice. The rain was falling and the forecast even suggested that it would stop at around 10 a.m. We only had about 8 miles to our overnight stop at Lambert Meadows shelter, so starting at around 10 seemed to be a good idea. It could not have worked out better. After we'd finished breakfast, gathered our stuff together back at the Motel 6, we walked across the road to the AT and the rain just stopped. Spoiler alert, it never rained again for the rest of the week. I was soon puffing and sweating, but eventually got into something of a rhythm and we were on our way. Do you know, there's something kind of indescribable about coming back to the trail after you've done it. For me, I immediately knew where I was. It was like coming home after a long absence and slipping easily into old habits, though in my case, in case you were wondering, I didn't fall this time. On any other days, quite a record for me. Also, early on that first day, I was hiking pretty close to Eric, and that feeling that I was getting from being back on the trail made me realise that, if I wanted to, I had everything I needed to just head on for Maine. I'd packed for a through hike, even though it's just 4 days. I told Eric, probably more to get the thought out of my head than anything else, but it was very powerful and I felt it for much of the day. The main climb of the day was right at the very beginning, with about 800 or 900 feet of elevation gain to reach a nice ridge. Of course, I was knackered pretty quickly, yet I just kept my head down and walked at my own pace. This was good, because we all had a different pace and style. Hugh and Beth were the quickest hikers, so they went ahead and waited for us to catch up every now and then. Michelle, Sketch and I had similar pace, though I was a little bit slower, while Betty and Eric tended to be nearer the rear. It didn't matter though, because we all caught up for snacks and lunch throughout the hike. I must say, I still find it a bit jarring to pass the spots where there are cuts in the forest to accommodate the electric pylons. It's a kind of nod to society that reminds us that we're escaping from it for just a couple of days. This was very much a hike of adapting on the go, and in fact, we never stayed at any of the places I'd originally suggested. The first night was the closest. Lambert's Meadows shelter, according to Far Out, was a bit small for tenting, so we stopped about 0.2 of a mile before at Lambert's Meadow campsite. It was a good choice. There were plenty of tent sites, loads of trees for me to pick from my hammock, a bear box, a nearby stream, a picnic table, but no privy. The picnic table, much like the kitchen back home, I suppose, is the meeting spot for all of us, either to sit and chat or prepare our meals. But quite soon we discovered the reason why Betty's pack was so heavy. Let Betty tell it. So, it's, when is it? It's the first morning. The first morning after the night before. We've been here at Lambert Meadow Campground, I think it is. I'm with Betty, who was our Mighty Blue class of 23 last year. So Betty had a nice little adventure yesterday. So we got here and when we were all packing up and we were leaving yesterday, we had about a 9-mile walk to here. Betty had a 40-pound pack. And she's only about 80 pounds herself, so it was ridiculously big for her. So, Betty, when did you find out you were perhaps overloaded?
Well, I knew I was overloaded, and we did the shakedown the night before, and we took some stuff out. But I couldn't imagine how I was more than last year.
Yeah.
And unpacked sitting at the picnic table last night and pulling out things that you were going to need for dinner. And I saw a green kitchen towel in the bottom of one of the side pouches.
Yeah.
And I thought, what the heck is that? And then I grabbed it and I realized that it was a 5-pound dumbbell. And the entire reason that it was there is I had just recently done a talk at the junior high school about last year's trail. And I tried to make my pack simulate the weight that we would be carrying so that if the kids wanted to try it on. So there was this 5-pound dumbbell.
So when I got up for breakfast this morning about 5:30. It was total darkness and I didn't have a headlamp. I could only use the torch on my iPhone. And I brought all my stuff to the picnic table. And there was Betty's dumbbell right in the middle. And actually, we were very kind to you with the name we've now given you.
Yes.
Instead of dumbbell Betty, it's now barbell Betty, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, within seconds. So Magic Feather is history. Barbell Betty it is.
There you go. Not kidding you. It was a dumbbell. We cracked up. And to her credit, Betty did as well. Funnily enough, the following morning, waking up early and heading down the trail to dig a cat hole, if you know what I mean, I thought I'd stay up and have breakfast. Gathering all my cooking stuff and food, I wandered over to the picnic table in the dark, and there was Betty's dumbbell, sitting there all lonely. I had another giggle. I forgot to mention, that night, lying in my hammock, I could see out and our campsite was bathed in light. There'd been a full moon the day before, and it was still incredibly powerful. I always find things like that to be amplified in the forest, don't you? Sights, sounds, stillness, all amplified and better, if you will. Eventually, others joined me for breakfast and we talked about the day ahead, and barbell Betty's dumbbell, of course. The original plan, and one we started out with, was to take in Tinker Cliffs, the first part of the Triple Crown, then hike on to the second iconic spot, McAfee Knob. After that, we'd head down to Catawba Mountain Shelter. In my mind, the shelter was just 5 minutes from the knob, so we thought we could set up camp at the end of the day, then walk 5 minutes back uphill and be there at sunset. Yep, I know, I was wrong. So we set out from Lambert's Meadow and again had a stiff old climb to reach Tinker Cliffs of about 900 feet in less than 2 miles. It's never easy, well at least for me, to climb nearly 1,000 feet, so I took my time and trudged on. But the views at Tinker Cliffs, as always, were spectacular. The day was clear and we had an unimpeded view along the Catawba Valley. To my delight, all my fellow hikers were as blown away by the cliffs as I had been each time I've been there. I took a photo of Beth and noticed that she was holding a poles and that they pointed directly to McAfee Knob, still nearly 5 trail miles ahead. I thought that was kind of neat. And there isn't just one spot on Tinker Cliffs for photos, there are a number spread over about 500 yards. We also spotted some glorious daffodils in the woods just back from the cliffs, which gave us a nice sign of impending spring. There were so many leaves on the trail that, in places over this trip, they were calf deep and hid all sorts of possible dangers. On the way to McAfee Knob, the only other clear view was at the ledges a few miles further on, offering a wide open view of Carving Cove Reservoir and that wonderful sight of layers of mountains surrounding us. That never gets old. We were in established groups by now, pretty much established from day one, so I came to Campbell's Shelter, which is about 0.7 of a mile short of McAfee Knob, and found Beth and Hugh kicking back for a bite to eat. As I approached the shelter, I could see that it had everything we needed, so I suggested another change of plan. There was a privy, easily accessible water, and plenty of tent sites. Far out was shown that Catawba Mountain Shelter was much more than 5 minutes down from McAfee Knob. It was about 1.7 miles. So I proposed we stayed put for the evening and get up early the following morning to see the sunrise at the top. This seemed to go over well, partly I think because we'd been buffeted by strengthening winds all day and we were all a bit puffed out. In fact, the wind became a growing factor as the evening went on and I had a few difficulties with my top, though I eventually sorted it out. There were a couple of other guests in the shelter, so we had another convivial evening with Hugh and Betty working on a fire that we never lit because of the wind. It was also during the evening at the picnic table that I proposed yet another change. I had totally messed up our plans and suggested that instead of a 15-mile day to Pickle Branch Shelter, God knows how I came up with that as an option, we should get off at VA 624 and treat ourselves to the Four Pines Hostel. I'd stayed there 3 times during my 2014 hike, don't ask why, so I was looking forward to getting back there. Unfortunately, Joe Mitchell, the guy who owned the hostel, had died the previous year, so the hostel was now run by his wife, Donna, along with Twisted and Joshua. The whole team embraced the change, so we were set. As I turned in my hammock, I found myself channeling what I call my inner Dara. Dara was one of the TSX Challenge team who, when we came to a water slide in our 2022 hike, was instrumental in changing my mindset over that and many subsequent hiking decisions I've made since. One of our team, another Steve, had already stripped off and was about to slide down the water-covered rocks. I didn't really want to get wet, what a wuss, and said that I wouldn't be doing it. Dara faced me directly and she asked, "You going to do it next time?" Of course, she was absolutely correct, and I needed that kick up my butt to just click the mindset over a bit. This time, as I was about to set my alarm for the morning, not to get up early and climb up McAfee Knob, I thought of Dara and changed the wake-up call. Instead of 6:30 to 4:30. I was so glad that I did. I've always been a notoriously slow starter in the morning, but as soon as my watch woke me the next day, I was all business. I had taken down my hammock and packed it away before anybody else stirred, and by the time everybody was ready to hike up McAfee Knob, I was right with them. My headlamp, which had inexplicably stopped working the previous day, had been replaced by a spare one of Betty's, so I was fully illuminated as I started to trudge. Also, of course, the moon was still bright, and though the sun was still below the horizon, the old moon really lit our way. We hit the knob still well before sunrise and had all the obligatory pictures, including a classic of Eric, literally crawling to within 10 feet of the edge. In one of the pics of me, I actually still had my headlamp lit. It was on the climb down that I realised how wrong I'd been about the proximity of the Catawba mountain shelter. And it made me realise, as always, your memory is a wonderfully imperfect thing. Some of the trail was how I'd remembered it to be, but my memory had clearly been playing a few tricks. The rest of the day was pretty straightforward, with short ups and downs, though the arc of the hike was predominantly down. Another completely lost memory was the walk through pasture near the bottom. Absolutely no memory of that at all. Though I've got to say it was tough on the knees, and I was relieved to walk beside the Catawba Creek at the bottom, which I did remember. Crossed a little bridge, and I was at VA 785 with nobody in sight. Far out showed an up and over ahead of me, and I sat there and thought, I'm good. Don't need to do that last hill. Nothing to prove. So I dialed the number at 4 Pines, and Joshua came to pick me up. Unfortunately, none of the others were around at that point, either in front of me or behind, so I turned up at 4 Pines and made myself at home. Beth, having made the climb, chugged in about 20 minutes later, with the others all getting there either taking that last hill or otherwise calling out Joshua. I didn't really know how the guys would take to the rather rustic hostel, but they all loved it, not least because of our showers and beds. Twisted took us into Salem, where we had a brewery and ordered take-out pizza. It was a blast. We'd lost Hugh by now, as he'd had to leave a day early, but we were now turning our thoughts to the third and final leg of the Triple Crown, Dragon's Tooth, on the following morning. It was so much easier the next day, as there were no tents or hammocks to stow, and the hostel had coffee and water from a tap. I was speaking with a young woman, not sure if it was morning or the evening before, when she kind of looked quizzically at me and said, "Are you Mighty Blue?" It never fails to throw me when people recognise me by my voice, yet it always makes me feel good. Some things are just too good to give up. Once again, the big climb of the day was our first hour or so, with more than 1,000 feet of elevation gain that got progressively tougher as we went up. There were rocks to scramble over, more leaves on the path to negotiate than ever, and it even grew steeper the higher we went. I'd always remembered the frightening down from Dragon's Tooth on my thru hikes when I was heading north each time. We were now climbing up, and it was no easier. However, I'd noticed that each day I'd improved my technique and my strength, and this climb was my favourite of the 4 days. I knew that Eric was a bit nervous of heights, and some of the climbs left us perilously close to a long, exposed fall, yet we all got there. I met Beth at the top, of course. She was first, and we sat for a while as I got my breath back, and then, again thinking of Dara, we climbed the tooth. That was tougher than I remembered, but so worth it. The views were extraordinary, and with the sun and a clear blue sky, we could see forever. And really, that was it. We still had to climb down to the road, which was about 5 miles away, and we all got into our own pace to get there. I'd arranged for Homer Witcher to meet us at 3 p.m. at VA 620, Trout Creek, and I got there about 2:30, where Beth took my picture as I rolled in. Betty was heading on to do more of a section to fill in some miles after last year's attempted through, so my one regret is that she didn't make it down to the road before Homer picked us up and drove us back to Daleville. This was a wonderful trip. I can't recommend the route we eventually took enough. For us, it turned out to be perfect, and I was left to reflect how much fun it is to go in a group, all of whom hike at different paces, yet all of whom come together as a unit throughout the day. I got the impression from all the others that they similarly loved it. None of us spoke politics, religion, or any of the other nonsense that pervades our lives. I never heard the news, totally didn't care to. We were just a bunch of hikers out in the woods enjoying each other's company and having a freaking blast. In such a fractured country, I think that most of us would benefit from a 4-day trek in the woods. So that was my hike, and I was left, as always, with a memory I'll store away and take out every now and then and simply cherish. As you know, I'm in England as you hear this, and next week you'll be hearing from me after my first days on the Southwest Coast Path. I'm looking forward to the hike itself, but I'm also using the hike as a fundraiser for Parenting Matters, the organisation I've been honoured to serve for the past 12 or so years. There's a link in the show notes to donate to the hikes, and don't forget, your donation, up to $100, will be matched by the Flanzer Trust, so your help to families and their kids will be doubly useful. I'm delighted to tell you that we've already raised over $2,000, and I haven't even started. So please think about it, and know that I'm so grateful for your support, and if you donate $50 or more, I'm going to trace out your name on one of the beaches I pass, thanking you for donation, and I'll send you the picture. When I get back to the US, I've got a great next episode lined up, so please follow the hike and know that we'll be back on the Appalachian Trail in a couple of months. I'll see you next week in England.